Hi, everyone. Welcome back. For our next session, I'm very pleased to have Vicky Karuga. Vicky is a psychometric consultant, and she's also the managing director for Profiles International East Africa. So they're a global leading consulting firm in the area of psychometrics, and she's going to explain a lot about that. So don't worry if you're wondering what psychometrics is. Yeah, she's also an emotional intelligence practitioner, and she's a digital learning enthusiast. Yeah, and for the session, Vicky is going to be taking us through. This is one of the sessions really talking about investing in yourself as a brand. Remember, like we talked about a brand being it's a complete experience about in the career field. In the career world, it's a complete experience about the person. It's not just your CV, your LinkedIn profile. It also has to do with assessments and many other tools that are used through the process are all used to make a complete picture of you, the candidate. Yeah. So she's going to talk a lot about that, and she's going to just talk about it generally for your personal use as an individual in your own development. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Vicky, and she'll take you through the next session. So Vicky, over to you.
Thank you everyone for attending the session. I'm looking forward to sharing the next few minutes with everyone. And I hope if you have any questions, just put them on the chat right here, and or Beryl, or send them through to Beryl, and I'll try and answer them as we go along. I'll also ask a few questions, so if you could please indulge me and just answer them back. Okay, Beryl, I am ready to start.
All right, here you go. Let me know when you can see it on your end.
Yeah, I can see the presentation.
All right, great.
Okay, so a little bit about Profiles. Profiles International is an organization here in Kenya and East Africa that does a lot of psychometric assessments in the area of people development. So we will do them for when people are being hired. We will do them when people have been hired. We will do them for people development, leadership development, management development. We also do other assessments, 180s or 360 in the area of leadership, emotional intelligence, and we also have, so we present the brands you see there. Those are psychometric assessments and our digital learning platform called Cross Knowledge. So Beryl talked about the fact that being or developing yourself as a brand as being a very holistic approach. And I want to give a short story because I remember one time I met the fashionista, if I may call her, Connie Aloch, and we were just having a chat, and she told me that when she gets someone to come in for a complete makeover, it's not as simple as just the wardrobe. Like you go and you shop with her and you get this amazing wardrobe and the change is instant. She told me it actually takes about one year or even 2 years for someone to really make that change. And that just goes to sort of amplify the fact that change doesn't happen externally. It starts from within. So you look at just the example of something like a wardrobe. What usually happens is you get these amazing wardrobes, but you'll always go back to what you're comfortable with because you probably associate that with certain sentiments or certain reasons. And so the same happens to you developing yourself as a brand. It's not a journey that starts on the outside. It's actually a journey that starts from the inside going outside. And so when you really discover what drives you, what motivates you, and where you really want to be, then you actually get to start bringing yourself to work. You're not just showing up at any assignment or at any venue. You're bringing yourself to work because you have a very strong identification with why you're there and what is in it for you wherever you're going. And so authentic leaders know who they are. They know what drives them, what makes them. They know what their values are, and our values keep changing with time depending on our environment and what we really want to achieve. So when you're younger, your value may be adventure. I love adventure. And as you get into marriage, your value may be spend and how they drive you and the guiding principles of life makes you able to want assessments as a way to tap into finding more about who we are, our authentic selves. And so I'll start by asking, what are psychometric assessments? Yeah. What did you think they were? Standard and scientific methods used to measure individuals' mental capabilities and behavioral styles, and other things such as probably abstract reasoning and strategy, how strategic intent, but they're basically standard instruments of measuring people, the human element, and actually the latent human elements or characteristics that drive us and make us who we are. So in your chat box, if you could, just tell me what are some of the beliefs that you might have about psychometric assessments. If it's not beliefs, you might just tell me what do they mean for you. I'll give you like a minute. I don't know if anyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I know very many people have given me many stories over the years. Seha, I hope I pronounced your name right, says they're a bit biased as most of the data and norms collected are not used in African populations. Okay, fair enough. They are a good indication of who we are or may be. I think they help one discover things about themselves based on the kind of test. Yes, there's no pass or fail. That one is very true. Trying to understand oneself and understand the candidate if you're using it as a recruitment tool or selection tool. Now, if says psychological assessments. So one of the things I also get a lot is that especially earlier on when we started selling psychometrics is that they are more of horoscopes. So they should probably tell you, like there you're told by the newspaper you were born between this time and this time, and so you're a Pisces. So some people may think that they're more of horoscopes. But a lot of you echo the same sentiments. Yeah, they are. There's no wrong or right time. There's no pass or fail. They're just one of the ways of self-discovery. And I know there's a lot of information out there about what the technical data is. So what you probably need to understand is that you have to try and get, and we'll discuss this a bit later on, you have to try and get assessments that are valid. If you have a question on how African traits and African population, and I'll share a little bit about that later. So Jeffrey says the indicators of our personality, our strengths and weaknesses tell us about our abilities and our skills. And then David says psychological metrics of human help us in gaining better self-awareness of oneself. So I will invite you as you go along, if there are any insights you do get from this discussion, please feel free to write them down, reflect on them. If you've had this before and it's probably making you think back on things you already knew, still write them down and see what you can do about them. If you know a lot about this area, then perhaps you should be going into the area of coaching and mentoring others into how psychometrics can be useful tools for them as well. So psychometrics, I like to say, tell you things as they are, and sometimes we don't want to hear them. And as William Arthur Ward said, the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects to change it. But we have to be a bit realistic about what our strengths are, what our challenges might be, especially if we're going to set ourselves on this journey called a goal or a destination. So we have to take them as just what they are, an assessment, giving me information, giving me data about myself. And so you'll encounter different types of assessments, from personality assessments, I mentioned cognitive aptitude assessments, and also other assessments that will take more of a 360 and 180-degree approach to assessing you as a person. So where did assessments start from? They actually have a long history, and if you Google assessments, you'll discover that even as way back in China, where they had these huge armies and they only wanted a certain kind of person in them, they were conducting assessments, which I think the pass rate was like 7% or 3% of the total population. So assessments have been around for a long time, and the idea of assessing people to ensure that they fit into a certain role or a certain function or job has been around for a long time. So we had psychologists like even Carl Jung putting people in different boxes, studying people and seeing that, yeah, there actually is sufficient evidence to state that people do fall in certain categories. Now, the method of measurement is what then started its journey, because it's not been that easy. It's easy to say, yes, we can tell the different kinds of people, but then because personality is a latent quality, it's not so obvious. How do we then measure it? So throughout history, the biggest problem had been how to be accurate in this measurement of this human element. And so we had MBTI come on board, and I think a lot of the assessments you will find also have an element of MBTI into them. And you will find very many assessments out there that come from a certain assessment, either MBTI or 16 personality. But all in all, it started by people recognizing the fact that, yeah, we all fall into different categories. We all prioritize different things. But when we put ourselves all together, we start seeing a pattern among certain people. And so it's the method of measurement that became known as psychometrics, falling along together with psychology, so that then you could begin to become a bit more efficient, a bit more accurate when then giving a report that someone has filled out, that this particular set of questions is designed and will bring out what we're looking for, or what this person actually is, even if we don't know it or he doesn't know it. And so the first set of assessments I'll talk about is cognitive assessments. And those are basically to do with how you process information, how you get data and make meaning of it. And they basically will touch on math, verbal prowess, verbal skill, verbal reasoning. They'll also touch on how abstract your reasoning may be, how you're able to use information you have strategically, basically just how you can manipulate information and numbers to be able to come up with a certain outcome. And these are in the world of psychometrics. It is a fact that the biggest determinant of whether a person can actually do a job or not is the cognitive assessment. It accounts for about 40% of your ability to do a job or not. Because if you do not have the mental capacity to actually process the information or what that role requires for you to do, then chances are that you will really struggle at it. And before you even go to see how your personality fits in, if you're already struggling at that level, then clearly we should take you somewhere else where you fit better. So if the most effective psychometric assessments will include a certain part or a certain component that is for cognitive or aptitude assessments. And so the next set of assessments is now the personality. It's the one that everyone does. You go onto the internet, you get very many personality assessments. I'm sure everyone goes in. I don't know which ones, maybe you could type there, which ones you have taken lately. I know there's 16 personalities, there's DISC, and DISC has all sorts of personality assessments. But personality assessments basically look at our tendencies, our behavioral tendencies, yeah, what we tend to prioritize. And they come back to how we actually see the world, yeah. So for someone, life may be a very urgent thing. In fact, when we talk about DISC, we talk about looking at people in two different areas. The first one is their need to control. So you have two kinds of people on the different extremes. One has a high need for control, and the other one has a very low need for control. So the high need for control, everything must be wherever it is. and things and processes must go in a certain way. So we try and organize the whole world around us. While on the other side, the person on the lower end with a very low need to control understands that, let's flow with it. Everything will work out eventually. Both of them are right. It's just the way that they see the world. And somewhere along there, you'll also get the rest of us falling in the middle, some with a slightly higher need to control, some with slightly lower need to control. And so along that axis, you can plot almost everyone in the world. But you, of course, have to start plotting the whether they have a need to control or not. And then the second axis that we like plotting them on is the need for affiliation, the need for relationships, for people. And you'll find human beings on both sides of the spectrum. So one person with a high need for affiliation, they like to be around people, they want to see people, they want to feel people, they draw their energy from people. And on the other side, you have the people who view everyone, almost everyone, with suspicion. And it comes from the fact that some people see people as, because everything comes from survival, everything comes from when we were, in the cave days. And if you read more into the theory of psychology and psychometrics, the fact that we needed to survive, we chose to control everything around us, or imagine that everything around us is there for a reason, and so we will flow with it. And the same thing, we chose to affiliate ourselves with people because we knew with people we had numbers and we felt safe. While other people saw it the other way, that no, I need to be able to control my space, or I need that affiliation with people for me is not something that I really, really like. And so you can plot, again, people on both extremes and also people in the middle there. So you start seeing how things are playing. You have people who have a high need for control, a high need for affiliation, while others have a high need for control and a lower need for affiliation. And so you start getting all sorts of personality assessments coming within those two axes. So you'll have various assessments that do various things. The first assessments that use mainly in job fit are for recruitment purposes, for hiring purposes, usually. And that's at the point of entrance, where someone asks you to take an assessment and they use that assessment to compare you with what candidates, what people who have flourished in that particular role look like. And so you're given a percentage match of how well you fit into that role. And so those ones use a job fit approach to assessing individuals. And they'll always have certain benchmarks, which they can then grade people upon. Now, the thing about job fit assessments is that they have to be, one, normed, because if you're comparing people with a certain particular population, then you have to compare them fairly. You don't want to compare them today. It's you're comparing them with this one, tomorrow you're comparing them with the other. So such assessments must have been run for a certain period of time and a lot of data collected on them, so that then they can then say that, yes, this is a true representation. If you look at the norm curve, it follows the natural norm. There's no tweaking here and there. So there's a lot of statistics when it actually comes to psychometric assessments and in the area of norming and job fit. And then the second sort of assessment you'll get is just purely the personality ones. And those ones are just more for information, more information on what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, how do I communicate with my fellow people, how do I get to understand other people and how they are. And then we'll get the MBTIs. MBTIs are a bit more complicated, but they give you a lot of information because they're based on letters, INTJ, ENTJ, ESTJ. Depending on now what you fill out in the assessment form, you'll be able to get a particular type. And then there's Ocean, which is considered 5 things. I think the one that is new is openness to experience. How open are you? And that's a 5th skill for them, to new experiences, to what life has to offer. And so you'll be plotted on a scale of openness. And then we have the 16 personality, which is almost a bit like DISC and MBTI, and many others. You could share with me on the chat any personality assessments, because those are the ones that are out there, a lot of that you might have come across. And yeah, and it's useful because people also on this channel can get to understand that there are very many assessments that you could just access purely off the internet. Okay, anyone? Beryl, have you used any assessments?
Yeah, I have. I think we did, when I was employed, we did DISC, the DISC assessment. Yes, and we did the 360. Yeah, so it was sent to our managers, sent to our peers, sent to the people reporting into us, and all that was used to evaluate whether or not, based on the way they were, what they were looking for, if we were fit for the next level for jobs.
Yeah, yeah. I can see also someone here has used Hogan. Yeah, that's a good assessment. MBTI for personal use. MBTI. I have 2 people for MBTI. Yeah, DISC is pretty popular, so it's been used quite a bit. So I'll move on, but you can still type on what assessments you've run, you've come across, or you've used, and you found useful. Okay, Enneagram. I haven't come across Enneagram. That one I have to write down to check. I like seeing new assessments. So Enneagram. Campaigner. I think I'm a chess player in 16 personalities. Is it chess? Yeah. Or architect. I think I'm an architect. So there's Hogan, there's Enneagram. Okay. Yeah, and I think in MBTI I was like an INTJ, if I remember. So you'll get very many personality assessments out there, and they're good. The one thing we have to understand is how reliable is this information that you get. So there's many things, okay, that make an assessment reliable, but I'll talk about 2 things. And the first one is reliability. So when you're checking for an assessment, and I know some of the bigger ones, this is something they take very seriously. So like Hogan is something that takes this very seriously. Most assessments that you will not get online take this very seriously, and that's why perhaps you have to pay a premium for them. There is a lot of reliability coefficients and validity that they have to check and get within a certain range for them to be declared as really valid and really reliable tools. And so the first one in reliability is the test retest. And when one person takes a test today and they retake it again tomorrow, the next day, do you get the same results? Or today are they showing up as INFP, and then tomorrow are they showing up as INTG? And why is that so? Yeah. So that's one of the things that they check that has to be on I think the coefficient is 0.7. Everything's always 0.7. And then internal consistency with whatever questions that they're asking. So you can't score high on one area or on one scale and then score highly on another. There are certain skills that are supposed to be at the opposite of each other, and we know that if someone answers this way, then they should automatically not be able to answer them on the other side. So checking again for the internal consistencies coefficients is also a good way of checking the reliability. And then you have to check the validity of the assessment. So we have the criterion validity. So this one just refers to the extent to which an assessment will predict a certain behavior. And with that, then we talk about construct validity. So whatever measures whatever constructs that you're calling, maybe it's extraversion, let's call the extraversion construct. How well is that tool measuring that construct? So we check the construct and say which are these particular constructs measured and actually being able to are they matching up with probably other assessments? If this is an assessment that is let's say MBTI, for instance, and is measuring a certain construct, if we then take another probably assessment that has been well validated, and the psychometricians and psychologists have given it an A, and we both check the results that we're getting, are we getting the same thing? And so there are quite a few things that when you want to ask yourself, is this an assessment that is giving me my value for money? You want to find out about the validity. Face validity is just saying that the results that you get, if you put them up and tell someone else can be able to say, yeah, that is exactly what whatever the report is saying is exactly the way that we are seeing it. And so there are quite a few constructs out there. There's predictive, not constructs, validity. There's also predictive validity. So, and all these basically have limits. I think most of them are 0.7. But when you want to find out how much research, actually that's the question, how much research has this tool been through for it to say that it actually measures what it's supposed to measure? Yeah. So someone has asked, what is the difference between reliability and validity? So reliability is the ability of an assessment to measure consistently across time, across, if you have different types of individuals, it's giving the same kind of information. So we can say it's reliable. We know that if we give it to Beryl, we give it to so-and-so, we're going to get the results that we're getting out of that have been tested in time and have proven that it is actually going to give us the results that we can rely on. In fact, let me just say, I'm reusing the word, but that we can rely on. So validity is a bit different, because validity then goes a bit deeper. We want to find out the nitty-gritties about how valid. If I'm asking a certain question about why am I even asking that question, is that question really going to tell me what I need to know, what I'm trying to extract from you? So it goes a bit deeper into the actual assessment itself. How valid are the certain set of constructs even for a certain thing? Because some assessments combine several elements and put them together and maybe call this is a D. Yeah, so like this combines several constructs and says a person with these things is a dominant personality. So it's more like, one is about how reliable it is. It can test over time, over different populations. And the other one is more like, let's go deeper and actually check how valid are the constructs it's measuring, the questions it's asking. And I think that's the best way I can explain the difference between reliability and validity. But trust me, you can go online and there's a whole lot of information. And maybe if you ask Beryl, I can also send you like some technical data that helps explain this a bit better. And then the last one was norming. I talked about norming when I was talking about the job fit. So a good assessment should have been normed against a certain population. A lot of the assessment companies now have been looking at the norming data between, I know in the States, the norming data between the African Americans, the Spanish, just the minorities, and the Caucasians. The differences over time have been very few. So you find like a point something difference or something that's not really significant. And that is becoming true also of global populations. But we still have different kinds of norm curves when it comes to different areas. I know like when we were doing norming for East Africa for one of the assessments we do, we had to redo some of the questions because we were not getting the results that we want. So a good assessment should carry out its norming, its norming procedures quite frequently, and it should give you data and say, we last did this probably maybe 2 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago, because achieving that normed curve statistically is important, because it shows that it is a true representation of the general population, and that you can use that assessment then to benchmark me and someone else. I don't know if I'm making sense. Rather than me and Beryl, you using Beryl as my benchmark, or using a whole different sample that has been normed, and so you're measuring people against something that has been used over the general population and has produced statistically a normed curve. But this is very detailed. And there's, as I said, a lot of information out there about what makes an assessment reliable, what reliability. I can see someone has actually posted about reliability and validity. And also you can also check on norming. And these are just the technical aspects of an assessment. So are there any questions up to now? Beryl, any questions you have on your side?
None yet. I think the one that came up, you answered.
Okay, so yes, Mary Rahab says, putting what George says, very simple. Reliability speaks to efficiency, while validity speaks to effectiveness. I guess that's a way of looking at it. Yeah, but like, there's a whole jargon out there that, but it makes a lot of sense once you start reading it. So why are assessments valuable? Because when you use assessments, you have a way of gathering objective data on people. And when I talked about job fit, you actually have a way of gathering data on people who've been successful at the roles and starting to see why they're successful, because there's, other than you thinking that they're successful because of this and the other, you get data that is not dependent on what I thought or someone else thought. It's actually just out there for you to look at it and see what it says. Then, as a reliable psychometric assessment evaluates a candidate, again, and provides objective measures of characteristics that we may not see. So you can tell me you're a sociable person on the interview and we can laugh, but when you go to your assessment, I can tell that you're deep down introvert. And assessments go both ways. So if the role demands that you be a bit social, then you might want also to reconsider that role, because then you're saying you're going to pull yourself away from your comfort zone, away from the introverted nature of who you are. So you might want to reconsider that role as you, the person, not even the recruiter. And then it evens out the playing ground. So we all know that appearances, we are human beings. So people make a statement to us when we see them, when they meet them. And sometimes it may be unintentional, and sometimes it just may be who they are. So providing that extra data with assessments kind of tries to even out the playing ground, so that you're giving someone a second chance by looking at that data and saying, okay, fine, maybe we didn't really see this in them, but maybe we need to give them a second interview. Yeah. And then assessments really are actually cost effective. I know in the beginning that they're quite costly. I mean, during the recruitment process, that is, or even during the development process. But the truth is, they help give data that would otherwise take months to get through. So for you to really get to know this person the way the assessment takes you some time to get to know these things. For you to start understanding how to deal with other people as well takes time. But if you're in a class and you go through this exercise, you start understanding what drives people, what motivates them, what drives you, what are your possible areas of connection. So why assessments? I like to say, begin with the end in mind. Yeah. Why do you want to do an assessment, or why is an assessment important to you? So first thing is, if you begin with the end in mind, an assessment is a valuable tool when it comes to personal development. Yeah. When you want to get actual concrete areas that you can leverage on for your career development. Yeah. When you want to understand what area of development would give you the most impact. So yeah, granted, you will have several areas of development, and some of them may not really be areas of development, depending on where you're going. So starts giving you a place of, like, this is, if I work on this one, I think this is where I need to start, because this is where I see my biggest challenge is to be, and this is most likely. Well, the next one is objectivity, because as I said, you get to see that data, whether you agree with it or not. I always like saying you're the person who answered those questions. And especially if you're dealing with a really good assessment, you answered those questions and you answered them in the way that only you could. So whatever comes out of the assessments, whether you agree with it 100% or not, is actually a lot of data on you that you might not even know. So Johari's window comes into play. Some of the things that whenever we're doing a debrief with someone is, okay, fine, circle the things that you agree with, and then circle the things that you don't agree with. And a lot of the times, you'll find that some of the things they don't agree with is because you might not even have been aware that you're presenting yourself in that way, or that is something that drives you or is a priority for you in your life. I'll give a case in point where I'll actually give my own experience. So when it comes to objective judgment, I am more intuitive than I am a logical thinker. And for the longest time, I thought I was very, very objective. And so I never did agree with the fact that I make decisions based solely on how I feel. And it took me a 360 to then start getting comments from people like, she doesn't understand her bias. You know, when you start seeing words like bias, then you realize, okay, hang on a minute. Maybe there is something about my thinking that's not as objective as I thought. So when you go back to the assessment, if your goal is in self-development, then you start understanding the nuances and the things that actually play out when it comes to objective judgment. So in my instance, if you meet me, I'm a very expressive person, and I talk with my hands and everywhere, and it's very easy for me to display pleasure or dislike. And those are some of the things that were given in the assessment. So if you look at an assessment in the light of, I want to use it to possibly see where the areas that can make a difference for me, then you begin to see that even those things that perhaps you might not really agree with might be part of you really not knowing or understanding how you present yourself to people around you. So when are the times that you might need an assessment? When the goal may be clear, but the way there might not be. So you do know where you want to go, but and you also kind of know how you want to get there. And you want to know what of you might actually be in the way of you getting there. When you've been receiving feedback, you know, some people might be telling you something, you're like, but me, I'm not like that. And you're not sure where it's coming from. Do a personal assessment, see what it says, and then start understanding why perhaps that feedback is coming in. I mean, people might be saying you're a bit, you need to learn how to talk to other people. And then you're like, oh, but you know me, I say it as it is. That's how I am. And then when you do the assessment, you find that, yeah, you're a dominant character. Your assertive nature is, you know, high up, outlier type. And as much as you may stand up and say, yeah, assertion is really good, but you must also realize that there are people who assertion actually demoralizes them or demotivates them. So what do you want to do? What's your end goal? Yeah. So if your end goal is to rally people so that you're also able to achieve something, then assertiveness is definitely working against you. So it's those kind of things that you want to have a deeper understanding of yourself and what's really motivating you. Understanding where you draw your personal authority. So if you're more of a dominant character, you probably draw your authority from being able to stand up and direct where things will go. But you forget that every single time, because you want to take charge of a situation, and it's innately you, we can't blame you. You can't even blame yourself either. You lose out on the fact that everyone around the room will automatically look up and want to see you take that direction. If you're on the other side and you're more conscientious and you're more analytical, means you're also more quiet, but you have a lot of information that you could give, that could help a situation. And Mr. Dominant stands up and you go like, oh, here we go. So you're very aware that you're more likely to withhold or just sit back and let everything play out, because for you, having an argument is just not your thing. But at the end of the day, what we've all just done is not let the best decision that could have been arrived at happen. So as much as we sit comfortably and say these are our personalities, we must ask ourselves, and how is that enabling decisions? How is it enabling solutions? Yeah, or how is it disabling solutions? And when you start looking at personality assessments like that, then they take a whole new tangent, because you suddenly can't sit and say, but this is how I am. Yeah, and this is how I come across. No, I'm very analytical. So if you don't bring me work that's very, logical and has got all these details, I wouldn't look at it. I could be on the other side, and I just love being with people and talking to people. So it's understanding who are these people that you're working with, and especially if you're ascending to managerial positions, meaning people are reporting to you, your bigger responsibility starts being to understand yourself and how also you will react to others and where they're coming from, because then you become either an enabler or you become the reason why they hate coming to work every single day. So looking at assessments from that point of view also starts to play with emotional intelligence, the art of gathering data on yourself and then gathering data, emotional or otherwise, on other people, and then now starting to see how then situations stop being black and white, and there are all manner of options, because people are not, they're not robots. People are not robots. And then when might you need a 360? When you've had you've taken personality assessments, you pretty much have a good idea of what you, of self-awareness, but you need to get feedback on others. So when you want to know what would make the most impact in the team, or wherever you work, or for you as you grow as a manager, or whatever level it is, then a 360 is better because it gives you actionable feedback, real-time feedback. And it's unbiased because there are several people feeding back on you. So you get to have a deeper understanding of how your personality is actually playing, how it's showing up in instances at work. The only thing is, don't do a 360 and then invite your spouse, significant other, and children to rate you as well as your coworkers. That doesn't work. So where do you want to make the most impact? You do a 360 of that particular area, and then start now taking it back and tying it back to the personality assessments you've had and also what people have told you. And that's when a 360 is more beneficial to you. So in a nutshell, who am I? What are my strengths, resources? What are my development areas? What might be my values? I'm sure this whole summit has had different people coming in to tell you of different things. And so if you look at all that in a nutshell, so what do I want? I keep saying you have to begin with you, because then you will be able to recognize that also other people have needs. So what do you want? Yeah, and then what do you need to do to get there? How do you need sometimes to adapt your style, because it's not always about you putting yourself, your pro self out there. And how do you get there? How do you network? What's your development plan like? What's the one habit you're going to form this year that's going to change a lot of things for you? Yeah. So thinking about it that way starts letting you see as personal development actually from a very selfish point of view. So earlier on in your career, start with a personality assessment, or even just a psychometric instrument and an aptitude assessment. And if you've had a psychometric assessment done, just make sure it's a valid tool, so that you know that you got the results that you can stand by. So not that you come today and then take one and then go tomorrow and take another one and tells you something different. So look for a solid tool, because once you do a nice, good, solid assessment, then you know you're good to go for some time, rather than getting conflicting information and you don't know which one to trust anymore. And then take a 360. But before you take a 360, really understand why you want to take a 360, because sometimes 360s can be quite harsh. Especially if you're a bit younger. When you're older, you've probably grown a bit of thick skin, but understand why you want to take a 360. And the last one is really, really important. Learn to let go of the outcome. Yeah, don't skew it. Don't expect anything. Don't hope that people are going to say you're such a nice person. Let go of that outcome. Just do the assessment. As someone said, it's not a pass or a fail. It is meant to help you grow. So let go of the outcome. Let it be what it will be. Look at it, receive it with grace, get someone to debrief you on it, and start working and start on your way to where you want to go. And I think with that, I'd like to end it with this saying from Rumi, which I think is very apt and speaks a lot to self-awareness and defining our own journey wherever we're going. And I will open the floor to any questions that you might have.
I have a question here. Are assessments useful for other areas of life outside of career? And give us examples of how that can be.
I'll give an example of me and my husband, because I think that's not my career. And yes, assessments are are a useful tool outside if you take them that way. For the longest time, we fought. Let me not even use a nice word. We fought, and only after I came into the world of psychometrics and I did my psychometric and she did his psychometrics. Unfortunately, we were in a very technical world, so we didn't even know psychometrics existed at that time. That was about maybe 8 years ago. Did we then begin to understand where we were both coming from? So did I begin to see that he was not just fighting me, that he's a very strong individual, very challenging individual, but so am I. So we had to start working together. So psychometrics are not just for work, but we use them a lot for work. I guess because that's where most employers will invest in them. But if you can take the time, even if it's just the online personality assessment, do it with even your family. Because once you start beginning to understand where all of you are coming from, what your priorities are, how you, I say it's how you see the world, then the relationship is a lot better to work on than before. It gives an objective explanation of why we are. You know, when you go and tell someone, you know me, I don't like this and the other, it's different from someone tells you, hey, this assessment tells me. It starts being a bit more objective and kind of removes emotions out of the picture a little bit, which then lets us work on something more rationally, is what I would say.
That's a very good answer. And you know, in follow-up to that, could you maybe let us know, are there some that someone can use with their kids? Maybe you're trying to understand, you know, your child's interests and their personality. Are there some that are child appropriate to do?
For children, I think just understanding the four personalities: choleric, sanguine, phlegmatic, and what was the other one? Melancholy, might be a nice place to start. There are some assessments out there for kids. I could send you links to them. But you know, with kids, you want to, I mean, it's not like work. The assessments recommended for work have a lot of information associated with work. So for kids, you're trying to develop that relationship. So starting on that easier note, then starts getting you to understand, like, what are your kids' needs? So what's a phlegmatic's needs? What's a choleric's needs? Yeah. So there are assessments out there that you can use, and I would actually recommend them, so that you stop guessing, huyu mtoto wangu ni kichwa ngumu, and you start choosing the correct language. In fact, if anything, assessments give you a language that you can use that is not judgmental and doesn't make someone feel judged, if you get what I mean. Yeah. Well, it's easy when I come and tell you, you're so choleric, so you're going to be a pusher. When I tell you, you can't listen to anything. So I think it helps give us a language with which to talk through things. I'm seeing this here saying, are there possibilities where after taking an assessment you become dissatisfied and depressed with the outcome? Yes, and that is why I said at the last minute when I was finishing my presentation, I said, learn to let go of the outcome. Because if you already want yourself to be a certain way, you know, it's like wanting yourself to be a millionaire. And then when it doesn't happen fast enough for you, you also get depressed. So learn to let go of the outcome. Yeah, let it be what it will be. Stop putting yourself in a situation of, what do you call it, where you can be let down. Yeah, that's just the way that I'll put it. So you find many people who wanted to be a certain style and it shows that they're not a certain style and they want to get there. You have to, that's why we talked about being the authentic self, the authentic you. You have strengths. Every single person in this world has a strength. Every single person has a challenge. The only people who get out of this are the people who understand how to leverage on this, understand that uniquely it is up to you, not up to even your brother or your personality or anything. Then there's someone who asked David asked after the tests and results, how do coaches come in to help influence the change you want to achieve? A coach's journey is actually to help you realize the answers you already have within you. So coaches come in to ask the right questions. So they'll look at the assessments, they'll probably know what they mean, but the work of a coach is to ask you the right questions that you need to be asked for you to stop thinking or start thinking in a certain way. So they come in because of their vast experience. They will probably help you step out of like a spiral. What do you call that thing? You know, like when you're in somewhere, they keep saying that if you keep doing something the same way and expect change, that is not correct, or that's not right. So they'll help you stop moving in that circle and kind of try and step out of it and see the circle from outside and see what you're doing wrong. It's Einstein who said you cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that created it. You cannot move out of something with the same way with the same way of thinking. That's basically what it means. So coaches help you to kind of remove yourself from that instance and start looking at things a bit more from the outside. And that's what they're designed to do. I hope I've answered that one. And then there was past, are recruiters compelled to give feedback on test outcomes? Can you request for the same second? Is it possible to manipulate the outcome? And then okay. So the first thing about recruiting assessments is that it is recommended that you never use just a personality assessment for a recruitment. In fact, in the more developed world, they can actually get sued if you use a personality assessment for a recruitment position, because you shouldn't recruit because of someone is dominant. You should have other things as well in that assessment for you to become to carry enough data for it to be used as an assessment for recruitment. So and it's easy for someone to say, I know these guys want a dominant character, so I'll try and play myself dominant on most of the personality assessments. So the second thing about giving feedback on assessments, it is important, I think. Some employers will give you, some will not, but you should ask for it, because I think assessments are supposed to help the individual as well as the organization. They're not compelled to give you, especially if they write to you and tell you that they're not compelled to give you. But I always ask people to ask, and I will also tell recruiters to share, because there's always an individual feedback which doesn't have percentages or information that only the recruiter needs to know. And then most assessments that I would deem as reliable have what we call the distortion factor. The distortion factor is just a scale that checks for how much is the candidate, or how honest is the candidate being with the answer that they're giving. And so most recruiters or most people will use that distortion scale to gauge on how reliable then are these results. So if you use a really good assessment, yes, it should be you should be able to tell that this assessment was manipulated to some extent. And we don't like saying manipulated. You know, we're all under pressure to perform so well. So it's called being socially desirable, yeah, to appeal to a certain role. So you will have a good assessment will give you a distortion scale, which will tell whether the person has manipulated the outcome. Yeah. And then, is it necessary to perform personality tests before getting married? I would definitely recommend it. I don't think people do, but may I recommend it? I think it will help. As I said, it will help us develop a language that is more objective and rational when dealing with situations and issues. Yeah. And I think I've answered almost every...
No, there's still one question I can see by Linda. Hello?
Oh, Linda, I want a friend to pass mental. You know, you can't, I guess what I would say to this is you can't control what you can't control. Yeah. So if people are being sneaky and making assessments appear, maybe who knows, maybe the assessment even disappeared, no one ever saw it. You also have to ask yourself if you really want to be working in a place like that. But you can't control what you can't control. And if that job wasn't gotten, it wasn't gotten. But in this case, how do tests create reliability and choice in new hires? Tests are meant to create objectivity in new hires. So if an organization is using it for the right reason to to get objective data in the candidates that they are interviewing, then they will use them properly. But if they're using them in a not so proper way, sometimes it's beyond your control. Yeah. I don't know if I've answered that one. And then in an organization setting, how do you win the management to accept a 360? We all know that human issues cost us a lot. They actually cost organizations a whole lot. And if someone is not being productive, especially as a manager, they're probably impacting on several people around them and on their productivity. And you get many people. I mean, I've had people tell me, I really don't want to go to work, not because that the workplace is a terrible office, but the people there. So how do you get management to buy into a 360? Well, they would wish to develop their people to be the kind of people who people want to report to, who encourage productivity, who inspire them to work, inspire them to deliver, inspire them to bring out their ideas. You get management to buy into a 360. There is again a whole lot of literature on how people issue and you get 60. About the uses of 360, of what someone will do. 360s give you the actuals. This is the way this situation is. And if you want to see impact, this is the way that you need to deal with it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so George says, I believe anybody being assessed needs feedback. Yes. And once you take an assessment, it is beneficial to you to at least have it debriefed back to you, so that you're also asked questions that that then also speak to, so that you're not also leaving yourself in that circle of denial. So it's good it's debriefed back to you. Yeah. And that you also understand the assessment for what it is. Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Mangeshi. You have Beryl, are you there?
Yes, I also had muted my mic. Yes, on our end, we've covered the questions here. So I don't know if anyone else has a question. Feel free to share, even as a private message. Yeah, and we'd be happy to answer. Yeah. But Vicky, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really, really great to go back and see how this is useful on a personal level, outside of just recruiting. Waiting for them to be done during recruiting, and they're just like, what do I think they want? Okay, let me, And I think for me, on a personal level, being where I am, people sometimes interview not just in assessments, but you present this personal brand in the interview stage or in your assessment that you're not. Yeah. And then you're surprised why you're uncomfortable once you enter the organization.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You misrepresented yourself, then you're unhappy and you're telling everyone how that culture doesn't work with you. Mm-hmm. But you kind of pushed yourself, you forced yourself in the door. So it's even just on a personal level, it doesn't work for you. Yeah. Then you start looking for another job after 2 months. So it's really to take those things into account. Just be yourself.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in developing your authenticity. And even when you get somewhere and you've gotten somewhere because you needed to be there for certain other reasons. So I just be authentic, understand it for what it is, know that you're moving through, but be authentic, even to the people around you. Just be authentic. Yeah.
Okay. And Vicky, how can anyone reach you if they need to reach you?
You can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I always accept friend requests. I am on Twitter, and you can share my email address. I can also share my email address here. So you can, if you want to talk to me, you can talk to me, and I will get back to you. Yeah.
Okay. And on LinkedIn, it's Vicky Karuga.
On LinkedIn, I'm Vicky Karuga. On Twitter, I'm Vicky Karuga. On Facebook, I'm Vicky Karuga. Everywhere, I'm Vicky Karuga. Yes, yeah.
All right.
So just, yeah, you can reach me on and Instagram of Vicky Karuga. Though you first have to ask me to be my friend. I'm very private on Instagram.
Oh, that's how your photos reside.
No. My Instagram is not very out there for sharing information. But my LinkedIn is always very open. I like connecting with people from everywhere. So if you look at me, yeah, someone said my LinkedIn profile. If you just look for Vicky Karuga, you'll find me, Vicky Karuga, on LinkedIn.
Right.
Let me share it. I will definitely connect with you. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and so for those, because I know there are some people on the call who are actually in learning and development and HR. So maybe you can just share a little bit again about Profiles International and how that would help.
Okay, so we provide assessments, like I said, for all levels of the talent development, from recruitment, and we represent a company called Profiles International, who are based in the US. So we have PXT Select, which is a really good tool when it comes to recruitment. So all those things about norming and validity are things we keep doing on a regular basis. And then, so the assessments we have range from recruitment, that is a PXT Select. And then we have then assessments for development, which now are purely personality, because we like to imagine that if you got in from recruitment and you've done so much time, then possibly the issues that might be are coming up are to do with personality as well. We also have team development programs, largely on Patrick Lencioni's 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, which we also run for organizations. And then our latest baby is called crossknowledge.com. In fact, you should Google crossknowledge.com. That's a digital platform where, and that's our latest edition. So we provide a whole list of courses, digital courses that you can attend, self-paced courses that you can attend. And I can also send you that and you can share with the audience. And then we also do a lot of programs on emotional intelligence. And actually, a lot of what I talk about when it comes to psychometric assessments comes from my background with emotional intelligence. Because the first thing about emotional intelligence is self-awareness, and then awareness of others. So we like to say, if you can start getting sufficient data about yourself, you start understanding where you're coming from, and then you start getting sufficient data about other people, even with the way they show up, the cues that they get, then you can start making decisions that are not so unilateral. You know, your choices now open up because you're able to approach people not in just one way, but be a bit more agile in the way that then you react to people, the way you solve problems, the way you actually see your relationships with people. And that's why I think self-awareness is a very big thing. Yeah. And that's what we do.
Yeah. So Vicky, thank you so much for your time. Everyone else, thank you so much for your time. And I
You're
look forward
very
to
welcome.
seeing you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.